retrospective look, if you analyze the development of data protection from the elaboration of the Fair Information Practice Principles, passing through the OECD guidelines and arriving at the Convention 108 and the protocols, it's possible to observe a connecting thread, a phenomenon of a regulatory convergency that in a way lead us to an interoperability approach. This interoperability must not only be a regulatory, but also academic. And this is why I think we need an interoperable data protection law scholars or scholars network. And I'm purposely using the term interoperability to stress that this interaction between scholars must not reproduce colonialist or dominant relations, but rather of exchange, respecting and recognize the difference in our political, cultural, and economic context. And then it is precisely by analyzing this diversity of contexts that we can arrive at a core issue. If a data protection law scholar network is highly desirable nowadays, why we are not there yet? And there are several social and economic challenges faced by some countries that pose barriers that we need to address. Many of them well known by the Global South. Language, it was already mentioned, is one of such barriers, but it's not the only one. And just to give an example, the last meeting symposium event organized by Lavitz was held on both Portuguese and Spanish, because even here in Latin America, we face that kind of barrier in terms of language. And another one is, of course, the lack of resource. It is an undeniable challenge that makes very difficult for countries, particularly from the Global South, to engage in any kind of network. For instance, in Brazil, we are facing successful cuts in education funds that have made progressively hard for academic research to succeed. And if this systematic hardship constitutes a problem for social science to sustain themselves internally, let alone engage in a regional or even in a global initiative. So recognize such socio-economic disparities. How can building a scholars network and help to reduce this type of resource asymmetry in terms of incentives? Perhaps serving as a hub, not just for exchange results, but also for attracting cross-regional research funding and consequently diversifying academic knowledge, perhaps. And also, I would like to give a concrete example. For instance, Lavitz was initially funded by the International Development Research Center, which is a Canadian or international funding that was. Now we are reaching the eighth seminar, because the first one was just made possible because of that kind of international philanthropy organization. And another point that I think we should bear in mind is that nowadays the political situation increasingly affects the agenda of our research agenda, and even the very freedom of expression of academics. In some countries, with authoritarianism shifts, it is inescapable to have as an object of study the intersection between data protection and democracy. And that was the last two conference of Lavitz. The main topics, the main, let's say, research agenda was about asymmetries and invisibilities, surveillance, gender, and race. And the last one was about surveillance, democracy, and privacy in Latin America, and specifically about vulnerabilities and resistance. So I think that we should bear this in mind, because perhaps that topic is not urgent in some countries or even in a major part of the global north, but it is extremely important in Latin America or even in the major part of the global South global countries. And perhaps I think a conference and committees whose calls accommodate this different voice and this openness for topics and for that kind of a framing of research agenda is very needed as well. I think we have several challenges that I've already mentioned, but I think and I do believe that there are a lot of opportunities too. So how we can build solutions to build a stronger scholars network. And I think my overall impression, based on the speech of my colleagues that have already talked, is that we already have very interesting and well-established regional initiatives. And our initial strength lies on recognize this and boosting what we already have. In this sense, and answering one of the panel's guiding questions, it seems to me that this new initiative could function as a super node that connects these regional nodes. For instance, LAVITS, which I'm part of, already has a track record of bringing together academics in the region of Latin America, and more interesting in an interdisciplinary way. The founders of LAVITS, all of them are from political science, geography, and so on. None of them are lawyers. They were very, very, very kindly to accept me in this network. And this is a very, and that kind of approach is very, very rich. For instance, when in the last conference, when we were discussing about surveillance and the territory, we have the approach and inputs from guys from geography, political science, and of course of lawyers. And I think that the same happens with the Asian Pacific network. So I think that this kind of network, and you are already witnessing the nodes of this network seem already to exist, but something is needed to connect them. Perhaps this is the main task of this movement in terms of unity, as the title of this panel also provokes. So to conclude, I like to reinforce that and emphasize how necessary and welcome an academic data protection network is necessary. And I think the regulatory convergence and the interoperability trends facilitates it. But I think this is a kind of a broader movement. And here, trying to establish a dialogue with the Professor Colin Bennett, which is one of the main academics in our field and who has been studying regulatory convergence in depth for decades, because academics too are, as one of his last books suggests, privacy advocates, people who dedicate their time to produce knowledge in order to strengthen this fundamental right in a transnational way. So I think that therefore is also important not to lose that kind of perspective and values, to oxygenate this kind of network and the knowledge that we want to produce. So that's it. I'd like to thank you again for having me.
Thank you. And actually, we saw Colin Bennett in a slide by Ragnar, so I think he's very present in all these discussions. Thank you very much. You have a fellow Brazilian with you. So we have a fellow Brazilian with us. Luca, something that you would like to add from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I really enjoyed all the historical perspective and the great presentations of the previous speaker. And my input to this discussion is twofold. On one hand, I would like to present a little bit how we have constructed CPDP Latam and why we have shaped it in this way. And on the other hand, I would like to highlight some thoughts on how this network of scholars, or I would say an internet of privacy scholars, I would specify why I'm choosing this term, could be meaningful, and how I would suggest that could be shaped. Well, first of all, my name is Luca Belli. I know well some of you, but not everyone. So I'm professor here at FGV Law School, where I had the Center for Technology and Society, and then some of you may know me for other hats, like this CyberBRICS project that Gloria was kindly mentioning before. So, and over the past decade or so, a little bit more, I've been both in the academic sector and in the intergovernmental sector for some time. So I've also had some experience of how the kind of thinking that may have governments when approaching academics that I prefer to the academic life because of the leeway and freedom it affords to academics, but that is another story. So coming back to how we decided to create CPDP Latam, we decided to create it as a hybrid, as a sort of transgenic item that combines all the conferences that we thought were very worthy bringing to Latin America. Because the problem of Latin America is that, yes, of course, it had already a network like this, but it did not have a platform, a multi-stakeholder platform. That was also the original aim of the Privacy Law Scholars Conference that then became a purely academic, or with some practitioners, of course, but mainly academic conference. And indeed, when we created CPDP Latam, also we tried to combine it with Privacy Law Scholars Conference and create a Latam version of it. And the idea, if we had not an online event, but a in-person event, would have been to have also a full day dedicated to Privacy Law Scholars Latam. And then, as it is already extremely complicated to organize a fully online event, we decided to have a satellite event. We will actually announce it today at the plenary session. So this is something that I can announce only for you and those who are connecting this moment. But we plan to have a satellite event dedicated to AI